Has anyone ever taught you how to forgive yourself? This is one of the most critical skill sets to have, especially for someone who is looking to grow on the spiritual path. But very few people are ever taught the actual steps to forgiveness and to letting go and moving on from past difficult experiences. So today, I'm going to teach you the 4 steps that I have found in my own life as well as in the lives of people that I work with and coach. The steps that seem to work the best out of anything I've run across. And if you're new here, my name is Bridget, and I started this channel to share the life wisdom and spiritual lessons that are no longer taught in our society, but that are necessary to living a life that you genuinely love and that you're fulfilled by. Now, forgiveness is really more of an art than a science. It's truly one of the most valuable skills that I've ever learned, and I sincerely hope more people can learn it. And I hope this video reaches whoever needs it, because I can't tell you how many people I meet all over the world who are still beating themselves up. They're still wrestling with guilt and shame and feeling horribly about themselves, all because of mistakes, things they did in their past that they just have not learned how to let go of, how to forgive and move on. And when we do that, when we beat ourselves up or hold ourselves back with guilt, that's often what starts contributing to self-sabotage, to harming your own career, your personal relationships. It can really splinter out and affect every aspect of your life. But it doesn't need to. There is a path through these very difficult experiences. And with that, let's get started learning the art of forgiveness. Now, the first step in forgiveness is identifying the playing field. For this, I want you to think back on what it is that you haven't forgiven yourself for. And I would be willing to bet that when I even talk about forgiveness, something very specific comes to mind for you. It could be the memory of a specific event or a period of time in your life. But I'd be willing to bet you don't have to dig around too much to see what it is you have not yet forgiven yourself for. But first, I want to make a very important distinction. At no point in this process will we be going back and rolling around in the old negative emotions from that experience. That's just off the table. Instead, you want to look at that past experience with the mind of a curious scientist. And when I say identify the playing field, here's what I mean. When we look at those past experiences, those things that really eat away at us and we have difficulty letting go, we often get stuck just looking at that initial, immediate event. What was said, what we did, or what someone did to us, and we stop right there. But I want you to try to broaden your horizon a bit on this and think about where you were, truthfully, walking into that experience. So just as an example, let's say that you had an interaction with someone and you said or did something cruel that hurt them. Now, instead of rehashing what was said or done in that moment, we back up and we look at what was going on in your life and in your environment prior to that happening. Were you under a lot of stress? Were there other things happening in your life? Our brains, specifically the ego, tend to default to judging ourselves, and they don't do the best job of accurately assessing the situation and the pressures that we were under at the time. Now, we're not trying to forgive, we're not doing anything yet. We're just honestly assessing what was happening in that moment. And there's a very important piece of this that I want you to look at. And that is this. Had you ever been prepared or trained to handle that experience successfully? Whether it was a difficult conversation, a romantic relationship, an incident at work, you name it. Whatever it was, before it happened, Had anyone in your life sat you down and coached you or taught you how to successfully navigate that situation? I can tell you, I hear from people all over the world, and the resounding answer to that question is no. In fact, what I hear most often is people feel completely unprepared for life. We teach people things like calculus, but we don't teach people how to navigate the universal, difficult, painful experiences of being a human, especially being an adult. We're instead just cast out into adulthood and asked to sink or swim. And it's competitive and it's cutthroat, and it can be difficult to anchor ourselves and to find a path that works. Now, we don't want to feel sorry for ourselves, but we just want to take an accurate appraisal. What was the environment or the playing field that you were on at that time? And if we take it a step deeper, you also want to ask yourself, honestly, had anyone ever told you or warned you what the consequences were going to be by acting how you did? So think honestly, back throughout your life, whatever it was that you're still beating yourself up over or that you're struggling to let go of, before that happened, before that moment, had anyone in your life sat you down and cautioned you against doing what you did? Because again, that's something I hear all the time is no. I didn't understand that by doing what I did or saying what I did, I would then be wrangling with guilt and self-doubt and judgment for months or even years. And maybe you didn't really understand the cost of what you were about to do. So if you can, take a couple minutes, you can pause this video and just really accurately ask some of these questions. Try to answer them as best you can. It doesn't need to be some big in-depth process, but just start accurately looking at where was I at in consciousness? What kind of preparation did I realistically have for that situation? And did I go into it understanding the price that I would pay for doing what I did? Did I know how long it was going to linger with me? Once you've done that, we move to step 2, and that is identify the lessons. For this one, it can be really helpful to get a notebook out, or even just a piece of scrap paper. And I found that people tend to do the best when they can see their thoughts out on writing in front of them. Because for this, what I want you to do is look at what do you know now that you didn't know then, specific to that incident. By going through that, even if it was painful, even if it was difficult, even if you feel like you didn't handle it well at all, what did you learn from going through it that way? Whether about yourself, about any other people that were involved, or just about life. I mean, you learned that there are very, very real consequences for our actions. You learned how long some of these difficult experiences can linger with us and how they can affect our beliefs about ourselves and how they can quite literally stick with us for years. You could even take a step farther back from it, and that experience, because you haven't yet learned how to let go of it and forgive yourself, it brought you here. And you're now here learning how to forgive. You're learning the art of forgiveness, which perhaps no one taught you before. And these big critical life skills like forgiveness and letting go, they're often learned this way. They're often learned painfully. And there's not really a way of getting around that. It takes these big, profound, intense experiences to really get these lessons to stick to us, to integrate all the way down to the soul level. And that brings us to something very important, is these lessons, when they're truly learned, they actually do penetrate all the way down to our soul. And when we pass away and we reincarnate and go to our next life, we obviously can't take anything physical with us. We can't take money or nice cars or beautiful clothing. But what we do take are these lessons. These profound lessons about life about spirituality, about faith, the big lessons, they actually truly do sink down to the soul level, and they stick with us, so that when you reincarnate in your next life, you come into your next life knowing these things. That's what's behind the supposed old souls, where we have children born who have tremendous wisdom. You're looking at someone who in their past life learned a lot about life. And so they are born and they come out often as prodigies in their next life. And that is really something more that we should aspire to, instead of chasing, flashy cars or fancy homes. It's chasing understanding about life, about our souls, about the spiritual and true aspects of life. And we learn those lessons, the big ones that we carry over into our next life. We learn them often painfully. They're big, they're intense. That's what gets them to stick. So take a couple minutes if you can, and just write down anything that you can think of that you learned from this. You may have learned how much your actions impact another, or how they impact you. Maybe you learned something about energy. Maybe you learned about healing. Who knows? But take a couple minutes and just jot down anything you can think of that you learned from it. And then when you're ready, let's go to step 3. So by now you've identified the environment you're in, the playing field. You've also gotten honest with yourself about what level of preparation or warning you actually had, and how educated you were about the situation and the consequences of it. And now you've started looking at what lessons you learned from having had that difficult experience. And that takes us into the 3rd step, where we actually start forgiving ourselves. And there's actually a 4th step after this, so stick around, because it's arguably even more important, but you can't do it until you've done this 3rd step. Now, when most people think about forgiveness, what I see all the time is immediately their brain kicks in and all of their awareness and their attention moves up to the brain, and they look at me and they say, I want an analytical, step-by-step diagram of forgiveness. Prep me for every single feeling and every stage of it. I want to know it through and through before I do it. But forgiveness is a lot like love. And think if you've ever loved another person or an animal, a beautiful place, even at a majestic sunset, could you make a diagram of the step-by-step of that amazing feeling of your heart bursting with love? I'm fairly certain you couldn't, because this is what almost every great author and poet and songwriter throughout human history has wrangled with. How do you describe these intense, soulful feelings that are nearly universal to the human experience? The truth is, we can't, and we're not meant to. We're not meant to spend our time describing and thinking about feeling them. These are just things that need to be experienced and felt. So I'm going to teach you how you can get out of that thinking mind of trying to analytically process forgiveness and drop back into the body, where we can start feeling and working with it. Now, this is a tip that I learned from Eckhart Tolle, and it works so well, and it's very simple. If you find your mind starting to really kick in and analyze and want to latch on to a strict discipline or process for this, just sit still for a moment, and without looking, try to feel your toes. Can you be sure, without looking, that all of your toes are even still there, that one didn't somehow miraculously fall off? When you do that, the light of your awareness drops out of the thinking mind and back into the body, which is in the present moment. It's right now. And it starts scanning the energy lines through the body, down through the legs, into the feet and the toes, which is great. That's what we want. We want to be back into the felt sensation. So that's great for any of you that may feel that mind wanting to kick in and overthink the process. So when we're present, we're in the body, we now start trying to understand the art of forgiving. And we do it from this clear headspace or mindset of understanding that perhaps you weren't really very well prepared for the experience that you faced. Maybe you didn't actually know the right way to handle it. And can you really beat yourself up for trying something and not doing it well the first time? If you look at the greatest Olympic athletes, the musicians, artists, inventors, these people who did something so big with their life that quite literally altered the trajectory of life for all of us, none of them ever got there from being perfect. Every single one of them has a wake of failures, mistakes, regrets in their past. What sets them apart from the rest of us is they learned how to fail. And a very big piece of that is learning the art of forgiveness. That you're only human, and you're not meant to be perfect and free of any missteps or errors. Every single person you will ever meet and you have ever met in your life has at one point hurt themselves and hurt others. Not one of us is free from that. I know I'm certainly not. And you're not meant to beat yourself up over that. From a spiritual perspective, one of the greatest mistakes, or another word for a mistake, is sin. The word sin is actually a term from archery, and it meant when you shot an arrow, it missed the target. It was a mistake. That's all a sin really is, a mistake. And one of the greatest mistakes or sins that we can make in this life is getting trapped in guilt. Guilt is so low on the spectrum of emotions, whereas things like love, forgiveness, and gratitude are very high. When you get stuck in guilt, all it means is that you have not completed this journey of forgiveness. You stopped early on in the emotional phase, and you allowed the emotions to override your ability to continue on and finish the process. And this is the process: identifying the playing field, identifying the lessons, and now forgiving, but truly forgiving, not just thinking about forgiving. And no one can go into your internal world and just flip a switch for forgiveness. It doesn't work that way, although that would probably be nice. Forgiveness is actually more a muscle. And if we're not comfortable or used to regularly forgiving ourselves for our mistakes, then the muscle is often very weak and it feels a bit awkward at first working with it. And that's okay. It's like learning how to run or lift weights. It's going to be awkward at first. You'll get tired easily at first. It's okay. You just trust the process. It's all right. But when you start forgiving, you look at the situation not from that emotional knee-jerk reaction of guilt or shame, but rather you show yourself some grace and you look at it from the eyes of more of a student. That experience came to teach you something, often many things. And if you really did the first two steps in this process, you can see now that maybe you weren't really prepared and you learned a lot from it. Why should you feel horrible about that? Now you may say, oh, well, I really affected someone else or myself, or you don't understand the repercussions. And no, that happens to everyone. It takes courage to show ourselves some grace, to forgive ourselves, and you have to practice doing it. It's amazing because when you do figure it out, you will feel this huge aha, and it is a profound experience, but it's very simple and it's quiet when you forgive yourself. No ticker tape parade is going to go off because you figured it out. It's gentle. And you just realize, oh, that's how you get wisdom. It's by trying, failing, and learning the lesson from it, and then doing a little better next time. So you can sit with yourself. Often I find that works best, just sitting quietly somewhere, not going into the emotions or the rehashing the events of what happened, but just sitting there with yourself and honestly assessing, does this need to be held on to? What would it look like for me to be free of this? To forgive myself for it. And you will start feeling things shift in your inner world. It's often a new line of inquiry, a new path that you're pursuing. It's a little different for each person, but you will not miss it the moment you forgive yourself. And that leads us to step 4, and that is asking for forgiveness. And I don't mean from any other people that were there. I mean from the divine. All of life is a balance. There is give and take. We are always giving and receiving in all situations. And forgiveness is no different. So we give ourselves forgiveness, but we also open ourselves up and receive forgiveness too. And that balance is critical in all situations. We start having problems when things are out of balance, when it's all give or all take. It takes humility to turn to the divine and ask sincerely for forgiveness. And this should be done with devotion and with respect, because it's very powerful when you receive divine forgiveness. And it's not something you have to guilt yourself or shame yourself enough to get. God doesn't want you to do that. Those are invented by the ego. That's not of the divine. It's not of the soul. You are meant to learn and move forward. Because as long as you are still beating yourself up or guilting yourself for the past, it means that you are living in your past. And part of you is not even present and living in your life right now. But life is precious. You are meant to be living. You are meant to enjoy life. You are not meant to be hung up on things from the past. We often learn in early childhood education that mistakes are to be feared. When we're growing up, when we're in school, if you speak out, if you fail a test, if you make a mistake, often you'll be teased by your classmates and punished by a teacher. And to our young, developing minds, we make this very dangerous but very understandable association that mistakes equal punishment and social pain. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Mistakes are a part of life. They're healthy. They're why great executives and inventors and artists often use the phrase, fail forward. Mistakes are made because you are trying to live. And yes, you're not going to do it right every time. No one does. There's not one person out of all 8 billion on earth that is not failing regularly. And I'm talking daily. And that's okay. That's expected. It's expected by your fellow man, but it's also expected by the divine. It's only the ego that wants to stay and stick in guilt and shame and regret. So we turn to the divine and we ask for the divine's help, for God's help. Please forgive me. It can be quiet. It can be very personal and just special to you. However you want to ask, however you want to pray. There's not a right way or a wrong way. But when you do that, you complete the circle. You've given to yourself, but you've also received. Forgiveness truly is an art. It's more like writing poetry than it is conducting a scientific experiment. And it takes practice. But I sincerely hope that you start letting yourself off the hook a bit. Lighten up. Get back out and live. Just like the examples of famous inventors and athletes and musicians. Think when they made their early mistakes and they inevitably screwed things up for themselves and for other people, what if they had quit then? What if they had just given up because they didn't feel worthy of going on further? We all would have lost out. All over the world, we would have missed out on their gifts being shared with the world. And the same is true for you. There are gifts inside of you that you don't even know about yet, that are just dying to be expressed forth to help the world. But you will never find them if you're still hung up on the past. Because I can promise you, you've only got about 1,000 more mistakes to make going forward. Why not get comfortable and get good at forgiving yourself? You're going to need it. We all do. But if you take this step and you start working on it, you start freeing yourself from these past experiences. That's how you start finding the gifts in you. Maybe you are meant to be an amazing inventor or musician or some contributor to Earth. And if you just quit now, you make all of us miss out on your gifts too.